Alexa, welcome to Hotter in Person.
Hi, thank you for having me. Oh my God, that's the first time. I didn't even know we had an Alexa in the living room. I guess we do. I need
Oh
to
my
change that.
gosh, that's so funny. Okay, well, Alexa, um, I wanna get into who you are, but I wanna kind of start off with the journey of how you got to where you are. So you started your journey with a fashion blog
Yeah.
at 12 years old.
Yes.
What inspired you to start sharing these experiences and like thoughts online at such a young age?
So I started a life in the fashion lane when I was 12, way before this whole influencer world and dynamic was a thing. I mean, there was no content creator, there was no TikTok. So I grew up in a really small town called Mansfield in Connecticut, and had a what I would say was like a pretty traumatic childhood. And so I loved to write, never did good in school. And so the blog for me became this passion project, I would say, to kind of fill the void that I felt like for me growing up as this kid with no money, no connections, to be that role model. And I really was just trying to create a place where I could meet friends, etc. And that was what the blog was. And then from there, I built it out into this lifestyle platform and ended up cold pitching a podcast I had and selling that to Radio Disney. And that's what's done the Disney show. And I had that for about 2 years.
And how old were you when you were like pitching this, developing this?
The Disney show?
Yeah.
I cold pitched that when I was 18, I think. So I was a bit older to enter the Disney family, but I wrote that first email. I was living in Boston at the time. I moved from New York to Boston, and I was 18, yeah, when I started filming Fearless every day.
That's honestly crazy because it's like people that are 18 are just going to college. They don't even know what they want to do with their lives. Like how'd you even get to Disney and pitch it to them and have this like I'm ready and this is like the product and it's gonna happen.
Well, it wasn't really like that. A lot of what I've done, I would say 99, almost everything actually I've done throughout my career is really, I think I've got this. I don't know how do you say naive, but in plural. Like I've always been very naive with business endeavors because I think the way that people think, oh, I'm going to write this email, I'm too scared to write this email because I don't know what they're going to say back. I think the opposite of like if I don't write this email, I may never get the yes because I don't think of anything with that fear factor in a way. I feel like immune to the fear that people usually have when they write a cold pitch or whatnot. And so when I had written that email, I was literally writing a blanket email to like 466 producers on one thread. I always believe deeply in kind of introductory emails or conversations. And I think for any young person, right, who can write 5 or 10 emails a week and just introduce themselves to someone, you never know what'll come of it. And that was really my mentality from it. I had done a bunch of TV segments that I'd also cold pitched. I had a podcast, but I never would have thought they would have said yes to a show idea. So I wasn't necessarily pitching a full show at the time. I was just like, do you want to meet me? Do you want to take a meeting? And it really went from there.
Which is so insane also because you're saying that you had a podcast at 18 years old, and I feel like the podcasting industry was like barely
Yes,
beginning.
you're so right. I mean, that was like right when I would say like Joe Rogan, the whole Caller Daddy thing really had started. So I really saw that world and industry rise. And so it's been so fascinating to be so involved in seeing it shift so much because when I started, it really wasn't like nearly how it is right now.
And you moved from discussing fashion to talking about body image, mental health.
Yeah.
Was there a specific moment or experience that made you want to focus on the deeper topics?
Yeah, I would say well, when I was 16, I wrote a blog post about an eating disorder that I had. And I would say in the high school that I was in, that went a little bit like viral in the sense of a lot of, I remember girls and their moms reaching out, like, oh, I didn't know that you had this or whatnot. And I remember just having a bit of like a light bulb moment of like, oh, wow, it feels really nice to be validated for something that I went through. And I wonder if other people are going through that. And then when I was 18, I spoke at a conference with the online therapy platform called Talkspace. And it was in that panel where I ended up meeting a therapist and we ended up starting a nonprofit. It ended up, I would say, dissolving years ago. But we ended up creating this like DARE program that was supposed to be this newer, improved form of what they do when they teach DARE. And that got a lot of traction as well. And so those experiences and the conversations I was having over the years were so led by my own experiences that I felt so easy. It felt so natural and easy for me to talk about it. And it was just, it would resonate with certain people. And I just, along the way, it just became, I think, part of my overall brand was just that I don't really hold back from sharing those things like a lot of people, especially obviously on the internet, would.
You're very much an open book, which is why I'm excited to ask you everything
Yeah,
and pick your brain.
of course.
But when you say that you were posting all of these things and like getting feedback, were you only posting? Because I'm trying to think. Obviously, I've only had my podcast for a few years. You started yours earlier than I did, and thinking back to like the Joe Rogan, Alex Cooper beginnings, like were you posting all over social media? How were you having your podcast grow so much at such an early age?
Yeah, that's
Like
the
so
thing
many
is,
years ago.
I don't know that I would say that it necessarily did or ever did in that realm. I would say that like the entrepreneur side of me and the speaking engagement, etc., grew more than, for example, the podcast. I think the Disney show to me validated the need for a figure in that space that was talking more about entrepreneurship. When you've got, say, like an Alex Cooper talking about sex, and you have, that kind of demographic. You didn't really have at that time someone who was my age talking so authentically about entrepreneurship. And so it was a lot more of a niche that I hit onto versus something that is more widely intrigues people, which is like sex or something like that, right? Especially like hot girls talking about it, etc. And so I would say that like
Mhm.
the more cult-ish following that I've built is based on people who are that age and had a similar identity to me, but were more interested in business. And so that's really led into other things that I've done or other companies that I've started. So I don't really look at the podcast as too much of the way that probably like a Rogan or an Alex Cooper does, like being the main thing. Whereas I would say more of like just the overall personality that I would have being more of that, and the podcast is kind of just a brand addition to it. And that's something that I've said always for people who want to start podcasts because it's so hard to scale it and monetize it. Is you have to really look at it more as brand awareness, not like an
Mhm.
end all be all.
Right. And growing up, you've spoken about like facing bullying and struggled with fitting in. How did those experiences kind of shape the way you view social media today, and does it influence your approach to what you post online?
It doesn't influence it, but it definitely has made me, I would say, just be a lot more kind, I would say, to myself in the way of really realizing that, like, wow, it doesn't really matter what people think about me. And I would say that TikTok in particular, I wish I had started it during COVID. And I didn't because I didn't really understand it. And I didn't really think it has the power that I think now that it does, like 5 years later. But I would say that that in particular has really allowed me to hone in on being the most authentic figure, whereas I've always found it extremely hard to grow on Instagram. YouTube is its own beast. TikTok really does allow someone who loves to be in front of the camera and I think has built a brand as a personality to capitalize on that a lot of other platforms don't do. But I've definitely really stopped with a lot of times, like I don't really look at the comments of certain videos that I know can have an edge to them or that people are very going to be very particular about the responses because that just gives me anxiety. So that's just, I don't really view those.
And also, even though you went through these things growing up, these like challenges with fitting in, I feel like your confidence, at least it seems to me, has never really gone anywhere. Like you were able to still have the confidence and like believing in yourself and the goal that you wanted to accomplish with your business and with pitching to Disney, with all of these entrepreneurial things. It seems like none of other people's judgments ever really got to you.
Oh, I'm glad you think that. But, well, I would guess so. Yeah, I also think a lot, I think, how do I say this probably? I think a lot of creators are a lot more controversial. And I think right now in this day and age, I've seen a lot on TikTok in particular about like a lot of these weight loss influencers, and you find out they're taking Ozempic. I I don't think I could ever lie in a way because I don't, sure, I could do like a white lie or whatever, tell my boyfriend I'm not hungry if I'm hungry kind of thing. But in the way that I've seen a lot of these influencers really unauthentically build these platforms, like that's just not me. I've never been like that. And I think it's super dope that I've been able to maintain authenticity with all the experiences that I have because that's what I find that's what keeps me going is being able to think like wow if I tell you that I was sued that may help someone who's going through it if I tell you that I was rejected by this that may help someone so that's just like a natural part of me whereas I think a lot of these creators don't do this for the right reason but I didn't start this to be an influencer it wasn't a thing like I started this because I was a kid who was bullied and then I love business I love entrepreneurship the social media part to me is something that has allowed me to maintain other businesses that I want to or have interest in participating in, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And in your TikToks, you're open about the highs and lows of social media and how it impacts you mentally. And would you be able to share a time when social media negatively affected you
Yeah.
and how you were able to get through it?
100%. So I mean, I would say the biggest thing that really made me like reevaluate not only my career but my life was in like actually about a year ago today in April of last year. I was like fully canceled. I ran a half marathon and had no idea that like you have to sign up. It was a spur of the moment thing. I was in New York. I was like dating this guy. I was like, I'm running, come run. And I tweeted after running this marathon, this very emotional tweet that was basically like, keep running, like, follow your dreams. And there was one sentence in it that said, I just asked where it started and where it ended and started running. And it's so crazy when I look back thinking like, wow, it was a year ago. But like, I just remember it like clockwork in the way of how everything happened. And it was like one of the most, if not the most traumatic career wise things that's ever happened to me. And it was, you know, that kind of thing when you go through that makes you like reevaluate not only the internet, but just like the world. And it took a lot of fearlessness, I would say, to really hone in on who I was as a person to be able to get through that.
Yeah. And guess what I had next to talk about with you? Getting
Yeah.
canceled.
Love it. Talk about it.
Um, Crazy. So like you had this whole platform built for yourself and then you get canceled and I want to hear how you found out that you were getting canceled and like just what went through your mind at the time.
It was so weird. I remember, so I posted this tweet. I ran this half marathon, and I remember sitting on the side of the street. I was like crying. It was like really emotional. I don't know why. I was just super emotional about it. I was gone through a really bad breakup. I had gotten sued by someone. It's awful. I was really proud of myself. Like I so authentically like ran this marathon. You know, didn't sign up. It was like again, like it wasn't a thought, right? And I also would say my career has really progressed since then. So, sure, I had a platform, whatever, but I don't think I had the same maybe exposure that I have now, like a year later. And so I posted this tweet, whatever. I was getting very fast, like tons of responses. It was like a really awesome tweet that I had posted, you know, and so it was getting a lot of responses from people on Twitter. So it was going quite viral. I remember the first hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, it was like 50,000, 100,000. I had never had anything go viral. So I'm like, wow, this is like what people talk about. This is so cool. Shit, people are following me. Oh my God. I'm walking down the street. I'm in New York. It's now like 4 p.m. I took a nap. I was like exhausted. I don't really have notifications on my phone for anything, but whatever reason, I got one response from someone being like, why didn't you sign up? And I just was like, what? And I replied, and I don't know what, I just, you know, sometimes you feed into like people's bullshit on the internet. I'm thinking like, screw this person. This is such an inspirational tweet. So I replied like, I don't know, got into some little like, I had just been screwed out of 17 grand by this client at the time I was like doing consulting. And I was like, you know, it's free to run on the streets, bro. Like, the fuck cares? Sorry, I don't know if I can
Hmm.
swear on this, but I literally was
You
like, who the
totally
fuck
can.
cares?
Go for it.
And then I wasn't on my phone the rest of the day. Didn't even look because I'm again didn't know the whole world of this running thing. So I don't have the notifications on whatever, but I'm seeing tons of new followers come in. So I'm like, wow, great. I'm on the board of a nonprofit and I'm like, wow, all of these new followers. Make sure you know to support the nonprofit. I'm like thriving.
Yeah.
I'm walking down the street Monday morning, the next morning, I go on my phone while I'm like hundreds of new followers, hundreds of new followers on Instagram, tons of, you're seeing views on TikTok of other videos. And I'm walking down the street. I remember I bought Nespresso pods on Facebook Marketplace in a like Lower East Side store. Some like Russian girl showed me. And I get an email from the New York Post. And the title, I'm like walking to something. I can't remember what I was doing, but the title is like backlash on tweet, and I just was like, oh fuck, 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 fuck. And I just go on Twitter. I like look at her email, and it was a reporter being like, do you want to address the backlash you're receiving for the half marathon you bandited? And I just remember, and I go on Twitter, and I just knew, and I was like, oh no, and it just spiraled. And I remember seeing that, and I remember I sent it to a friend of mine who's a publicist. It was like, what do you think about this? And I replied to the reporter and was like, unless you have anything good to say, I don't want to speak to you. And she was like, classic, like, I'll take your side of the story. My friend was like, do not answer it. And I was like, okay. And I'm thinking, like, I'm nothing. I'm nobody. I'm no Kim Kardashian. This is going to end. And it just spiraled. And all of a sudden I look at the tweet and we're at like 8-9 million and like not followers, I wish, interactions, thousands on TikTok. I go on my DM and it's like, you should die, you're done, cancel you. Yeah, and it just spiraled. And I would say then it was like Tuesday morning and it was like out of control. And then Wednesday, I was like in shock. And my sister was like, get the fuck out of America, like go to London. I'm having guys I went on Bumble dates with from like 2016 being like, yo, I saw you're on the news. Like, are you okay? And yeah, it was
Oh
terrible.
my
And it
God.
did not end. And it went on for, I would say, close to 6 weeks of just harassment across everything. And that's a long story. But yeah, that was it.
Did you ever post a response video, or were you just
Yeah.
like, I'll let it die down?
No, I did. I ended up, a good friend of mine is a publicist who I used to hire for a different company, and she helped me like write something, and that I would say escalated it. In those kind of scenarios, right? She wrote it, and then, people are like, you're not apologizing. You're never going to be able to do enough. And that's what I really realized is like, I put out this statement, I turned the comments off. And the number one thing going through my head is like, I'm sorry. And I still to this day, you have to be so cautious about it. But I look back on what happened and like I never want to play the victim, but like what happened is unacceptable and the society we're living is very scary. I was targeted for whatever reason and it should never have happened. Sure, I shouldn't have run the half marathon. I didn't know. Like a kid's going to eat a lollipop when their mom says don't do that until you tell them, right? So yeah, so I wrote the statement, but it was never enough. It was no longer at that point about me. It was about whoever read that tweet and twisted the narrative. That it's a mob mentality, and so
Was
that's just it. Just switched.
was your mindset like, ugh, this is really annoying, or like, oh my God, this is crazy, I'm getting canceled? Like, was it affecting your mental health, or were
Oh
you
yeah.
just like, oh, this is really annoying?
No, I had to fly my mom to London. Like I wanted to kill myself. I literally wanted to kill myself. I couldn't get out of bed. I was in a state of shock. And I think also like the people in my life, especially like my parents and the place, I'm from the super small town and my mom and my dad are, they're just like, I don't understand this, but why did you post that? And I was like, you guys are not understanding. Like I posted it because I didn't know what I had done was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just a really devastating thing to go through. And, all my friends and stuff were so supportive because they know me and anyone in normal, healthy state of mind. And that's what you realize, right, about the internet is 99% of people are not in a healthy state of mind. But I had hundreds of people reaching out being like really cool, successful people also that I think I just seen how the spiral had happened. And I'm only, at the time I was 26, 25 maybe. So a lot of really successful people that didn't even know who I was that I think were seeing it. And you see, people get canceled time and time again. And
Mm-hmm.
I walked away with a lot of really awesome industry connections who were like, look, I don't know who you are, but I'm seeing what's happening. And like, you're going to be okay. You're going to get through it. And that really helped me get through it too, was knowing you're seeing in front of you how insane the world is. And that's a shocking thing as a young person who like doesn't have any security blanket. I don't have a trust fund to see, because it really shoves it in your face of like we're living in a society where the influencer culture is obviously out of control, but also the culture we're living in with the media and the access people have, is out of control across the board.
And the crazy thing to me is was like, At least when people write hate comments on my videos, I'll click on their profile and it'll
Of
be
course.
like user 83321 and the like photo icon will be like a sloth. And I'm like, okay, this is just a freaking like robot
Yeah,
scammer, like not
yeah,
a real person. And if they are a real person, then they're too scared to show their face. Like
always.
you are literally spending your time just picking somebody apart, and the most frustrating thing is that they're not in your head. They don't know the context. You're truly just being misunderstood and they're like all attacking because it's like fun to them to get a rise out of you.
Yeah, and I think what was also really shocking and fascinating to me about this is I remember, the articles that would come out and I would look up the writer. And I remember one in particular, Zoe Deschanel had this platform called Hello Sunshine.
Hmm.
And I don't think it exists anymore, but I was started getting like this massive amount of like negative hate on top of what was already so negative. And the editor of Hello Sunshine wrote this just heinous tweet, like find this girl and cut her legs off. And that really, like, I mean, I texted that to all of my friends. And they were just like, screw this girl. And I was like, that hits a certain part of you as like a human being, as a young female, as an entrepreneur, as someone who has grinded and hustled and come from nothing. That just like, you know, I almost like, I wanted so badly to find that woman and really just look her face to face and be like, how dare you post that on the internet?
Hmm.
That is true scum of the earth, in my opinion. I would never do that. And I even, her tweet came up the other day, and I think she got a lot of backlash because I remember she posted another one being like, that was a joke, but like, da, da, da. And it was just, I don't know. Something about that one in particular hit a certain part of me that really, like, it's triggering, right? It's scary.
Hmm.
It's undeniably awful.
I always think to myself, happy people ain't hating and
No,
hating people aren't
no,
happy.
you're right.
So,
You're right.
like, if whenever I see any sort of comment like that on any of my videos or content, I literally laugh and I just feel bad for that person. I'm like, I'm sorry that you're going through something right now.
I wish I
But
had your head on my shoulders because that is such a healthy mindset to have. And I think for most part, 99% of the time you can be like that, but I would say always there will be something for whatever reason that will just trigger you in that capacity. But that is
mhm.
the exact mindset that you should have.
And you were saying that you had your mom fly to London, like you were in bed for days. Tell me how you got out of the rut and how you came back to posting and being okay with like just sharing your life online again.
The number one reason is I don't have a plan B. I have no other job. So if I stop working, if people forget about me, whatever, right? Like, how am I going to pay my bills? No one's paying my rent. And so I think, that was a reality of like, okay, I can sit here and want to die, but like, that's not going to pay my rent. So that's number one, transparently. Allison
Mhm.
Roman, obviously, she's like way more well known than I am, but she was canceled for something that happened, I think, with Chrissy Teigen years ago. She had to go silent. Bon Appetit let her go. And I would say, like, maybe 10 months ago I read an article, like her first article back, and they said like, how did you get the confidence in a way to come back? And she's like, I don't have any other option. How am I going to make any money? And it's like that, right? So I would say that's number one. And then number two, I also remember exactly where I was like in Austria with my mom. And I remember the exact video I posted after like 2 months back. And, I had built this base, right? This business of followers. And so, people had been waiting for like, what's going to happen to this girl? Because this has been her life on the internet. And so
Mhm.
that was, I think, taken really quite well. And I was glad because I waited until I felt like it was until my rent needed to be paid, but also like till I felt ready to deal with whatever was next. And I was hoping it would die down, and it did die down. Thank God. So I couldn't afford to not keep the business going.
Mhm. And looking back, is there anything that you would have done differently from point A, posting the tweet, to how you handled it, to like the mentality? Like, is there any point where you're like, I would have done everything differently? Like, how, if this were, which God forbid, knock on wood, never happens again, what's
Probably
your
will. Who knows?
what's your mode? What's your method of getting through it?
a lot of people, especially my parents, it was like this cycle of conversation in my like inner circle of like, but why did you post the tweet? And actually, I never live with regret. I've had terrible things, even worse. I've had one incident that was way worse than that happen, and I don't have any regrets. I posted that tweet. Do I wish what happened and transpired after didn't happen? Yes. But I knew that that tweet was inspirational because the first hours of it were responded to in such a good way. And that's the healthy people on the internet, right? That saw that. The first, I think, 50,000 people who were like, wow, this is so inspirational. I'm going to go run. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to follow my dreams. And that shows you right there that, like, it was one person that spun the narrative out of control. So I don't regret the tweet. Uh, I don't regret anything. I think everything was handled in the way that it could have. I mean, look, if it happened now, what would I do? I mean, I don't know. I think the more you go through in business and the more negative stuff, I would say there's like an edge to me now that where like I don't take any shit. Like
Hmm.
I know exactly, I won't say I know exactly how to handle every situation, but I know enough in myself to where I will always be okay. And I think that situation taught me so much about business and people that to where now, I mean, obviously you hope that would never happen again. And I don't think it really ever would, but I think it's a warning sign just to anyone in the media or content creator industry of being prepared and staying on your feet in the sense of, I don't want to say like you could be next, but like if this is what you want to do, you expose yourself to being targeted in any capacity at any given time.
Hmm. Also, you've been posting since you were 12. And the fact that this happened to you so many years later, once, like, I take it as kind of a win.
Yeah, but 99% of people it never happens to, right? And also like
I feel like now I'm seeing
I
so
know.
many people get canceled. Like one of my friends is getting canceled and she's like, "What do I do? Do I post? Do I not?" And I said, "You can go about it two different ways. You can either let it die down or you can respond, but it could escalate."
But what is she getting canceled about?
So she has a brand that's like all about inclusivity and people are speaking out saying like she's a bully and she's not this like sweet person.
Hmm.
And the people that are posting about it are influencers that have a bigger following than her.
Yeah, I feel like I know what you're talking about, maybe. Um, yeah, I mean, I think there is two different routes of it, and I will say that, like, a lot of times these cancellations that happen are valid-ish, right? Racist, sexist, not body inclusive, and that you need to tread really lightly on. People who come out a year later for taking Ozempic, but they're selling weight loss plans as if it was just like a calorie deficit.
Hmm.
Does it need to escalate in the way that it does? No. However, was there, I would say, more errors on that front? I'm not saying necessarily your friend, but some of these other things that I've seen, yes. Even like, I mean, look, this happened to Juliana Rancic. It completely altered her career with Zendaya,
Hmm.
right? I don't think in
Hmm.
any capacity she was actively or is racist. I don't think she thought twice about it. That comment she had made years ago, and that was her problem, right? Is you can never be too careful, but also
Hmm.
where is the line here with like you and this society is desperate for these influential influencers to do and say and be authentic, and then that authenticity means you're only human. But then there are people like Alex Earl or Alex Cooper, whatever, and I've seen them do things and it gets a little bit there, like them being canceled. And for whatever reason, is it their PR? Who knows? Where the narrative's completely switched and they're not canceled anymore.
Hmm.
So why I don't know. I have no idea how these get chosen. I think it's almost like that's of his luck of the draw.
What do you think about when you see people like, do you know Campbell Puckett? Like Campbell and Jet?
Yeah,
Remember
I
when
know of them. Yeah.
Campbell got canceled once because people found photos of her from college dressing up as like uh I don't even remember the time period, like a villager and it looked like she was a slave owner and they started canceling her and then she got like very canceled on the internet for a photo that she posted like over 10 years ago. What do you think about those kinds of cancellations where it's like people dig in the archives and they find like one thing that's not so out of context and then they try to take the person down?
Dumb, of course. But look, like she's fine now, right? I mean, anytime she comes up
Yeah.
on my feed, she's
Yeah.
famous. So I don't even know that I look at that as being canceled. I look at like a what happened to Juliana Rancic. I look at like an Allison Roman. I wouldn't even say like my situation was a bit more isolated and I'm not on that level. So the stuff with that, I mean, yeah, but then look, you look at it's so interesting, right? Because you look at what just happened with Dave Portnoy and this young girl, and like he put like gasoline or whatever like on top of fire with this young woman, it seems like, who did not hook up with the boyfriend's dad. You know,
Hmm.
why is she going to sue him? What is the right with that, right? You know, he made a situation terribly worse, and what's the repercussion for that? She's the one who like can't walk outside. He made it worse. What happens? Why is no one going after him? So it's just a weird, again, I just go back to like it's just luck of the draw, and if you're
Hmm.
the chosen person to be brought down at that time for any given reason, but it usually does come back to a form of jealousy about said person or however this person looks that makes people have the mob mentality.
Hmm. And even though in the moment it was really crappy and a crappy feeling, do you feel like it built resilience in a way?
100%. I would say everything I've gone through in business, that this other incident, or it makes you who you are. That's why. Like I'm not someone who lives with regret. I wouldn't be who I am now if I hadn't gone through that. All of that. But it's the one thing I will say that kind of sucks, but just, I mean, it's stupid, it's like dumb, it's minor, but the relationship that I used to have with Twitter, and I really did like that platform. I think like in the tech startup space, I have so much anxiety. I'll post for 2 months and now I've gone like cold on it I don't know. I don't have the same feeling about it. And that kind of sucks because as a business owner, right, you should be able to like participate in all of these platforms. But I
Hmm.
think like the mental health for me, I don't, I no longer have the following on there that I had, but I also just, I don't know, I don't like it as much as I used to.
Hmm. You lost a big following?
I had a pretty solid following. I had really authentically built on there. I had also hired a consultant over the months that I paid not a ton of money, but like money to help me grow it and interact with it. The podcast and the newsletter I really scaled through Twitter. And
Hmm.
so, I mean, I think I had 15, 16,000 followers. I don't even look anymore because it gives me anxiety. I mean, I've probably lost a few thousand. Um, yeah, and so that platform for the tech side of things is very valuable. And so I was able to monetize a lot of my other work aside from like say TikTok or TV segments or whatever because of the Twitter. And now I just don't really have interest in posting on it anymore.
Hmm. And I want to switch gears a bit to talk about Life Unfiltered. So you have a platform, Life Unfiltered, which encourages people to embrace authenticity. In your TikToks, you discuss confidence and how you overcome comparison. What does true self confidence look like to you?
I love how researched you are. You're a very good host.
Thank you.
I think true self confidence means really genuinely being authentically able to admit when you've number one done something wrong, but I think also being able to believe in yourself enough to where whatever it is that you're trying to do, you're able to do with or without public opinion or knowledge. And especially as an entrepreneur, that inner confidence is what will keep you, what I like to say is like kind of on fire in the moments, which is most of the time where you're like, I cannot do this anymore. That quiet confidence enables you to reach a new level as a person and a business owner.
Mhm. After the whole getting canceled thing, did you like have a whole new outlook on how you interact with social media now and like integrate that into Life Unfiltered and your other platforms?
Not really. I would say just for me, like as I've gotten older, I mean, I turned 27 in last October. I would just say like the age for me is really what's made me much more comfortable and confident. I think I've also been able to capitalize on a new audience online that I never really leaned into because I feel like I've never been so confident. I mean, like I was on a live the other night and then I had an event in Connecticut and you've got girls coming up to you being like, so funny when you talked about like that guy you hooked up with in your Facebook. And I think there's a weird part to where you border this, like I'm saying this to the internet and I forget, or not even forget, but like I talk so authentically about that because I think if I were watching me I think the things that I've gone through and the experience are so bizarre and so funny and probably unrelatable because they're so strange, but I think they're funny. But then, you've got someone coming up and being like, oh my God, you talking about that was so funny. And I'm like, oh, now you guys all know. They're like, I sucked that guy's dick on this, whatever, because I
Uh-huh.
was like saying it on this live. But, I no longer, I number one, the running thing in particular really helped me realize that, like, what matters to me is how I feel about myself. And honestly, like, how my parents view me is really, I think, all I care about.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and yeah, and then with the internet, that I think I have a lot more fun with it than prior to the running thing. Well, I hadn't started Chief Swag Officer, which is like my main focus as an e-commerce business, but I had, when you're young and you're hustling, you put so much energy and thought into everything, and I no longer put the amount of thought I did into the content, and I think that's also made it way more fun and to where I've really been able to be truly authentic because I just do it. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think, is this going to hit the right person? I just do it. And I think it's just a way more fun mentality to have.
Agreed. I I edit my podcasts, but to actually listen through an entire podcast of mine, like I'm just like, you know what? In the moment I was proud of it. I'm happy with
Exactly.
how it went. I'm posting and I'm never looking back.
Exactly. And you can always, like, I always think too, like, none of this kind of stuff, like, unless you're running a charity or you're like the president, none of this is life or die. Anything I
Mm-hmm.
like, right? It doesn't really matter. Sure, in our world it does, but we're not doing anything that's like out fucking, trying like being in the military where like people can die. And so I think that casualness about it too, of just like, sure, this is a business and of course you need to take it seriously, but like don't take yourself too seriously is a better mindset to have.
100%. And in one of the TikToks on Life Unfiltered, you mentioned how curating your feed to include more positive, empowering content has helped your mental health.
Yeah.
But how do you suggest other people approach curating their own feeds to feel more confident and less stressed?
I think it's up to you as a person to number one realize, like, with the amount of energy and effort put into like trying to be a content creator or influencer, why are you doing this? I always go back and I encourage people to get, if they can, in the mindset that I had as a 12-year-old of like, when I started this, it was because it was a fun thing for me to do. There was no, this is going to be the next XYZ. And that, again, being naive but also doing it because I wanted to like inspire one other girl and see if we could be friends, allowed me to build the confidence in myself. So if you go on right now TikTok, and I think a lot of people are like, what do I post? Well, I don't know. You post when you're ready to post. Otherwise, like, why the fuck are you doing this? When people are like, I
Mm-hmm.
want to be a blogger, I don't like to write. Bro, what? Like, you think I can't even look at blood? Like, I'm getting my tattoo removed, and every day I'm like, huh, you think I'm gonna go be a fucking doctor? No, are you insane? Like, why do you want to do this? You know what I mean? So,
Mm-hmm.
the first thing is sure, just posting, but like, you can either go about it like posting just to post, but the other side of it is like, if you're sitting there in a critical amount of anxiety before posting your first TikTok or tweet, why are you doing this? There's a million other things you can do. And if you want it to be in this world, why don't you go work for someone who's in this world and see if this is what you really want to do? Because I can tell you it's not what it's cracked up to be. But entrepreneurship is a very specific type of person to be able to handle it. So don't overthink it so much, but find why you're doing it.
Mm-hmm. And you are so. I was gonna say super, but then I said so. So it came out as Sue. You are so entrepreneurial. Like every venture that you're taking on right now is something that you've created, right?
Yeah.
So can we just go through for the people that may not know you, like all of the different ventures that you got going on right now? You got Chief Swag Officer.
Yeah, that's really, so that is like my e-commerce business that I started last year, and that I've really hit something on. And so that's like my main focus. But what like pays my bills is like the Alexa Curtis brand. So my newsletter, my podcast, this like community I've somehow randomly built in Connecticut, which is why I spend a lot of time here. So I'm operating essentially like two different, what I like to say, startups. Even though I've been doing my own thing for so many years, I don't ever feel like I ever saw a real business behind it, doing so many different things, a podcast, a Disney show, etc., the blog, until more recently. And I think that again comes with age and just maturity and being pursuing entrepreneurship for so long. So I would say like that brand and then the e-commerce one are really all I do.
And also you leave in your bio former Disney host. How long ago was that? And give us the rundown of like what you were hosting.
So I hosted a show called Fearless Every Day, the one that I cold pitched on Radio Disney from 2018 to 2020, right before COVID. And that was a 2-year contract that I signed with them. And that was a Radio Disney show. So I was living in LA. We filmed that like right on the Disney lot. And that was like really Disney's first mental health driven show. So I hosted it and executive produced it. So it was a good mix between like Disney Channel kids as well as more entrepreneur, mental health is figures that would come in and be on the show. And then I left Disney, and about like a year and a half after that, did a small spin-off with ABC called Fearless that was aged a little bit older. And so that was the Disney world that I was in. And then actually, like right when I left Radio Disney, actually ended up closing down. So they don't have that division there anymore. But it
Mm.
was some of the best years of my life. I would say the hardest, some of the hardest years, but the best years.
And you're leading me right into our next topic, which is the Be Fearless
Yeah.
Summit and Advocacy. So you founded the Be Fearless Summit,
Yeah.
and in your talks, you encourage people to be fearless. In your TikToks, you also focus on embracing this vulnerability. But how did the two concepts, fearlessness and vulnerability, work together in overcoming like self-doubt, especially on social media?
Yeah, so Be Fearless Summit, I actually started right when I think like right before I got the Disney show, and we would team up with different universities to host these in person events. It's a very hard thing to scale community. And so, like, the name of my LLC is that. However, I don't necessarily host those events. The last one I hosted was the day before the running thing happened. And
Right.
so I think at some point I will maybe start hosting them again. But I don't have the bandwidth right now with the e-commerce business. But that was really awesome because we would have speakers, celebrities or entrepreneurs come and speak to 40 or 50 predominantly young women about career topics and LinkedIn, etc. But it was this really sexy, fun format in comparison to other conferences that I find are so corporate.
Hmm.
And they're so cool. So the one that I had last April, which is the last one, was the first one we did without a university, and it was in Williamsburg. It was great. You have to come or speak at the next one if I ever do one again.
Yes, I
Like,
would love that.
yeah,
I would
like
love.
Ann Malum, who's the founder of Solid Core. I mean, exited now, but she was like the keynote. And so it's a lot of speakers like that, and there's panels and a catered lunch and whatever. And it was great. It was awesome. And it's, you're getting all of these ambitious young women in the door and having them network and whatnot. And that's very needed. And so I love that. I wish it's just, like I said, it's so hard to scale those unless you're like at the level of a chief where those women have so much money from like corporate jobs where they can
Hmm.
keep it going.
How do you run so many businesses at once? Like, do you like plan your day where you're like, okay, from this hour to this hour, I'll work on this and do content for this, and then I'll go into this business, like this endeavor?
Yeah, I do, but I also operate, I will be like transparent on a level of mania. So like I was 5 minutes late to this and like didn't show up to a thing I was supposed to at 2 that I was mortified to because I just like I kind of crashed. And that doesn't really happen to me, but I've been like on 4 days of just nonstop insanity. And I go a little bit too hard. And I think sometimes that definitely can impact perhaps growth because I'm doing a lot of different things at any given time. And so, yeah, but I mean, my day is pretty scheduled, but like, I couldn't, I don't know, dude, you're only human, right? So like,
Hmm.
I think also the thing I've realized with like getting older and being more of an entrepreneur is like, two, I couldn't, I don't know, I couldn't look at one more, I couldn't do it. I couldn't talk to anyone. I couldn't make this appointment. I felt really bad. But I'm like, the minute my brain is like, you just got to stop, I just like stop.
And you made it here,
I did.
and
This
that's
was
what
more
matters.
important to me. Yeah. And I
Yeah,
had 30 minutes and I went and bought these really overpriced protein ball things in Mansfield, Connecticut. So that was nice. So
is it
yeah,
good?
that's super good. The woman
Okay.
apparently this random smoothie shop like trademarked this recipe and they're so overpriced. But it's this weird like protein ball whey thing. Yeah, I don't know.
Oh,
But
okay, the balls.
yeah, they have them everywhere. But the way this
Yeah,
lady does it, it's a different way. But
chef's
yeah,
kiss. Wait,
exactly.
at the Be Fearless Summit, didn't you
Yeah.
speak alongside Serena Williams at one of them?
Yeah, it wasn't that was a conference that I spoke at because I do a lot of other speaking engagements at universities and whatnot. So that was actually the Pennsylvania Conference for Women. I mean, that was in like 2017, I would say.
Did
That
you
was
get to
right
talk
before
to
Be
her?
Fearless. Huh?
Did you talk to her?
Yeah, I did. It was actually her, Amal Clooney. They both keynoted it, and then I was on a panel. I mean, it was pretty fast though, but that was awesome. Those conferences, there's a whole circuit of conferences called the Conferences for Women, and they do like Texas, Pennsylvania, and that one was awesome. That was quite a while ago, but yeah,
That's like so epic. Are
yeah.
you not like, do you ever think back and you're like, wow, I did that?
Unfortunately, I don't, and I wish I did. I don't ever really think anything is ever enough, and it's one of my biggest downfalls. But I've met incredible. I mean, I've met so many cool people, especially on the Disney show. I was watching this Netflix documentary the other day, the one on that mom and her
Well,
YouTube.
Frank family?
No, the other one that just came out on Netflix
Oh,
of that
eight
like, cult.
passengers?
No, that like cult of not a cult. It was these young TikTok influencers living in the house, and the mom and the girl's still really famous. God, Netflix documentary. I'm looking it up. TikTok.
I've been to.
Dancing for the Devil, the 7M.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes, I've
Piper
seen that
Raquel.
one.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'm watching that. Yeah, and the it starts with my friend Colleen Broomall. I called her and was like, "Dude, are you suing them?" And she was like, "I'm about to." And then I'm halfway through an Ava Michelle who's on Tall Girl. She was like one of the best interviews. So I'm watching this and I'm like, oh. Then I got a little bored because I was like, this feels like too close to home. I know all these people. So yeah, I think of that, but I don't. You think of it, and I just think like, wow, Ava looks so old. She was like 17 when she came in. Now she's like 21. Not old. I'm like, oh, she
Hmm.
got so old. So yeah, you keep in touch with some of these people, like the dance moms people, whatever. But I think you just think they're wow, these are human. The other day though, with Chief Swag, this was like funny because I was just talking to my mom about it. One of my friends in LA, when I'm there, he films content. So we're walking down the street in LA, and I was like, oh, those girls look fun. Go interview them. Blah, blah. They're like these two 16-year-olds. They're stacked with Cartier. The outfits were like a little ratchet. So I'm like, I don't know what this is.
Okay.
And at the end, the girl's like, shout me out on TikTok, Harper.Lockwood. And I'm like, whatever. Like, more rich kids of LA, whatever. The girl who does the social media for Chief Swag, it's been a month, right? I'm in London and I'm like, we're getting all these new followers. So I text Hope and I'm like, what's going on? And she's like, I don't know. My friend calls me and is like, dude, do you know you interviewed Elvis's granddaughter? And I'm like, what? And I go on. The video's like 50 million views. She
Oh my gosh.
simultaneously messages me on Instagram and is like, as like a fake, like a private account. And it's like, can you send me the video from TikTok? And it was just a funny thing that, in life or when you're in this world, and I mean, you must see it all the time with your job.
Hmm.
But you don't, it happens, and then you're like, wow, okay, cool, on to the next.
I was just gonna say, because talking to you, I'm like, damn, you had your own Disney show, you got canceled, you did these summits, you have your own business, like you're doing all these things, like you should be patting yourself on the back more, but I totally get what you mean because with my job, I interview so many people all the time just to like write scripts, and I've interviewed really big people, but I never look at it as like a huge accomplishment. I'm just like, this is another day at work. Like, this is just a person. And I feel like me telling you this is making me think that I should be like celebrating these cool achievements of like interviewing this crazy person. Like Rainn Wilson, I interviewed, and Raven Simone, I've interviewed. And it's just like, I never thought of it as anything more than just like a day at work.
Yeah, and it's sad, right? And I think there's the type A entrepreneurial side that I think a lot of like very successful entrepreneurs think of. And I would say like now, I mean like even just not doing anything for 2 hours, which is like terrible, and I should have gone to that meeting and I shouldn't have been late to that. That to me was more of like a celebration of like 2 years ago, I would have had so much anxiety. I would have been like pushing through to go to it. And I would have been like probably crying with anxiety, whatever. And now I just like, I don't, what matters more is how you feel. But sure, you should celebrate it more. But then, I mean, there's people I've met. I met a guy at South by Southwest who's like my idol. I still like I have his number and him. I can't believe it. But that's like one out of every 1,000 people I meet that I'm like, oh my God. Cause he's like my idol. Everyone else is
Mm-hmm.
just like, oh, you're cool. But
Epic. Epic.
yeah.
And another exciting thing happening to you, you're hosting VidCon in June.
Yeah, well, not hosting, but Chief Swag Officer is showcasing, sponsoring it. It's like our first booth. I'm
Like, how are
extremely
you
scared.
feeling?
Like, I don't want to talk about it. No, I have a lot of anxiety. I honestly, I
Mhm.
have no idea how to feel. I really don't know. I'm terrified, but I think it's the right next step to do in the sense of like scaling this business. But no, I'm really scared.
I thought you were gonna be like, I'm so excited. This is gonna be huge. No, this is like so exciting.
I mean, I'm terrified. It doesn't mean it won't be huge, but like I'm terrified. I have no idea. I usually like attend them or speak at them. I know friends of mine who have startups and sponsor these booths, and it's just chaos. It's exhausting. So no, I'm absolutely terrified.
When it's done, message me and let me know how it goes because I feel like right now you have the anxiety, but once it happens, you're gonna be like, damn, that was fun.
It doesn't feel real, I think, because even it was so funny, I saw like Kourtney Kardashian has like Lemmy, right? And
Mm-hmm.
they were sponsoring, I don't know what conference, and Simon Huck, I don't know if you know who Simon Huck is.
Mm-mm.
He's like, Jonathan Chebin.
Yeah.
If you watch like old episodes of the Kardashian, like Simon Huck and Jonathan Chebin are best friends, but Simon is Courtney's business partner with Lemmy. And there's like photos of him, manning the booth at this conference. And it's so funny because I'm thinking like, wow, they're both multimillionaires, and the fact that like him as the founder is manning the booth, it's never enough. Like you have to always be so involved with anything you're doing, even when you're at that level. And I one time had a mentor of mine when I just remember like breaking down prior to Chief Swag. I was getting sued. And I remember calling her and I was just like, why am I not rich yet? And why am I not there yet? And I just remember her being like, that is the most disgusting thing you've ever said to me. And I'm so disappointed in you for saying that. She's like, that's what you want? And I was like, no, but I worked so many hours. I've been doing this for so many years. And she's like, okay, shut up and keep doing it. And she's such a bitch, but I love her. And
Mm-hmm.
I was like, what the fuck? And she was like, what do you want me to feel bad for you that you have to keep working so much? And I was like, well, I guess not. And she was like, yeah, so shut up and keep doing it. And I was like, okay. And that really hit because she is like an exited founder, whatever. And again, and then you see him on the floor manning this booth, and like he's a millionaire. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, look, it's if you love this, you have to love all of it.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, what do you want to do? Sell a company and then do what? Sit on a beach and then do what?
Right. Low key, kind of boring.
Of course I want it and we all want it. But then it's like, okay, I always, you have to think, right? If that's your end goal. And I don't think any of my founders who are like the most tremendous multi-million dollar founders, that was never their end goal. It got to a point where they were like, I'm probably going to kill myself if I keep doing this, or I need to sell it so that I can do something else and like be a human again, but
Mm-hmm.
not so they can just sit on a beach.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. Jonathan Chebin I also interviewed. He was fun. He was
I've never
actually
met him.
he's really nice, really cool guy. But yeah, I'm like surprised I don't know that other person.
Yeah, you probably will recognize him if you see him. I feel like he's a bit more like undercover with them.
Yeah.
But he was always in that like same circle. So I mean, if you watch like old Kardashian episodes,
Oh yeah, I did. I'll
yeah.
look him up after.
I
Okay,
was watching an
so
old episode of Millionaire Matchmaker and Jonathan Chebin was on it, and I was like, this is so funny.
really, he's a character.
That's super
Um,
cool.
yeah, no, it
Yeah,
was fun. He came on for a food segment.
so cool.
But anyway, your TikTok blends honesty with humor, creating a space where you can talk through tough topics like self esteem, mental health. But how do you stay motivated to create content that helps other people, even on days when you might not be feeling your best?
If I'm not feeling my best, I don't really post anything. But for the most part, I think I know myself enough now to know when I'm hitting that point or when I need to take a break, etc. And so I would take, that break if it's an hour or if it's a day. Um, so wait, can you ask me the question once more? I got one part of it out, but then I had something else I was thinking.
Like when you're not feeling your best, how do you stay motivated to keep
Oh,
creating content that helps other people?
I'm obsessed with business. So if I am working is when I feel my best, but when I burn myself out is when I feel my worst, so that I don't really want to do anything. So the goal is that you never get to that point. But I would say that every
Mhm.
experience that I have is probably intriguing to hear about or watch, which is why I so authentically will say a lot of the stuff that goes on in my life. And I know that, whether it's entertaining to someone because I thought it was funny or whether it's real, and that's the stuff I would say a lot more on my podcast, which is like the real, perhaps more intense, business oriented, negative, rejection, etc. I feel like that's where I talk a lot more about that. I feel like that, hopefully can help someone. And then I would say the TikTok, I would say I look more at more as a fun thing because people I think are more wanting entertainment on there. They don't necessarily want as much like deep, deep stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that to me is more like fun.
Got it. And then out of all of the things that you do and have done in your work endeavors, what's been the most rewarding part of all of it?
The most rewarding part of all of it is like the face to face meeting with someone who has either been impacted by something that I've done or has like met a friend through an event that I've done or, just has started a business because of something I've done. That I would say is worth all of it, all of the conversations, all of the pain, whatever is that one on one. I mean, this e commerce business is completely different than like the personal brand that I've built because you don't have that same relationship with the customer or like the fan because you're not selling them a story, you're selling them a product. So you don't have that same feeling that when someone comes up to me or whatever, or when I'm at an event and speaking or whatnot. And so I like the in-person thing a lot more. But the other business is quite fascinating because it's still, consumer and like front facing. But I would say that one-on-one connection is incredible.
Mm-hmm. And that's all the interview questions that I have, but I always end my interviews with some fun rapid fire questions. So this can be like one word, a sentence, whatever you want, but it'll be quick. So here we go.
I love this.
Do you think social media has more of a positive or negative impact on confidence?
Negative.
Would you ever take a complete break from social media for a week if it meant improving your mental health?
Yes.
Is it possible to be confident and still have moments of self doubt?
Oh, that's literally like me. If you Google my name or if you ask me, that's that every day, every minute.
Do you think TikTok is a platform that helps build people's confidence or increases insecurity?
I think all of these are gonna be down, 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 down. No, terrible.
Yeah. I think
Ruins your
that,
your security.
yeah. Do you think that your platform helps boost people's confidence or makes people insecure?
100% boosts because I'm a nut job and I post everything so authentically, but I am 0.0% or 0.1% of this world of creators. So that's why
Hmm.
tread very carefully on who you follow. And remember that I have been doing this for years. I have seen people come up, I have seen people go down, I have seen authentic, I've seen people become millionaires from this, and I've seen people become broke from this. But
Hmm.
I know what my lane is, and a lot of people don't because they started at a time where it's so saturated.
What keeps you, apart from like, this is your job and like you need to do this, is there anything else that keeps you like totally in it, totally like not stop going with it on days where you just want to like relax and take a day off?
Well, number one, I really struggle with a lot of guilt, which is a terrible, stupid, stupid thing that I struggle with if I'm not working. And I wish I could, and I hope as I get older that I can get rid of that. Even today, my mom was like, "Why don't you just become a housewife?" She was like, "Aren't you so tired?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm exhausted." But I was like, I would rather die than ever settle because I know I'm not where I want to be. And I think there's also a reality you face, especially in this industry, is like, I may never hit that point. I may never hit that point, and it's super scary. It's so scary because what is that point? I don't know, notoriety or exiting a company. I may never hit that, right? And I may
Hmm.
whatever, but at least I know that if I were to get married and whatever, that I have tried my hardest and that I have put everything and that I have impacted people and that is all that matters and that's what keeps me going. But the possibility that I can hit that is also what keeps me going on the days where I'm just done. I'm just defeated because if I give up then I'll never know and I can't deal with the guilt.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense, but
No, it does. I feel the same way. I mean, people tell me all the time, they're like, you can just become a housewife if you want. And I'm like, no, that's like not an option. And nothing's getting in the way of me reaching the career success that I want. And if I don't get
Exactly.
there, I'm not gonna like have regrets in life, but at least I could say that I tried, and hopefully I just use my personality and like my like internal character, like my character for good, and
Yeah.
help spread like connection and joy through other people's lives. And as long as I impact people in a positive way, then like I'm doing my work and I'm doing what I'm set out to do.
I think you have to also realize too is like you'll get there, but it may look different. The way that I thought about my career when I was 16 is so different than I think about it now in that stage of getting there and like really what is happiness, blah, blah. That all evolves as you change. So you will get there. It just may not look like what it looked like when you started.
Also, I always think to myself, it takes 10 years to become an overnight success.
10 plus years, honey. You're talking to someone who's been doing this for 12 years and I'm like
Yeah,
barely scratching a surface.
yeah, exactly.
I'm in
And then
debt.
people are like, oh my God, that happened to her so quickly. What the hell?
It's never like that.
Yeah.
But look, it does. That's where I say TikTok is very negative because there are people, I would say everyone who's gotten really famous from TikTok and Alex Earl, etc. It happened extremely fast, and that was the same way that like me getting canceled happened so fast. That is just pure luck for that, I would say, platform and what has bred talent out of it. But it's up to them to maintain it
hmm
if they get famous from that platform in particular. But the Theo Vaughn, Joe Rogan, that world of people started
Right.
10 plus years ago. And it depends what type of business owner, celebrity, entrepreneur do you want to be? Do you want to be an overnight success or do you want to be a brand with longevity? If you don't care, then, that's on you.
hmm If you could, if you could be famous for one thing, what would it be?
If I could be famous for anything, it would be I would, inspiring young people to pursue entrepreneurship, whatever that means, to
Love
leave a
it.
small town to do something different with their life.
Love. Okay, would you recommend starting a TikTok as a way to express confidence and help others?
Yeah, sure. If you want to.
Okay.
It's like I guess why not? If you like to be on camera.
hmm Do you feel more empowered when you receive positive comments or when you post something that resonates with your audience?
Well, I think if I'm posting something that resonates, the comments are probably positive, right?
Sure, it goes hand in hand.
Yeah, I would say so.
And then last question, is there any specific type of content that you avoid seeing on your social media to like protect your sanity, your mental health?
My whole Instagram is muted. My
Oh,
whole Instagram.
oh.
Well, I follow my best friend Sarah. I see her post today. She was at the one hotel, and I thought she was gonna wait for me to go with her. A little annoyed about that. Follow my sister. Literally, oh, my boyfriend, but he doesn't post. He doesn't even view my stuff. And his best friend, I follow him, and my trainer, who also never posts. So my whole thing is muted. TikTok, I really actively don't scroll. I know that it affects my mental health so much and my sleeping when I scroll. So it is very rare that I'm ever on there scrolling. And then, like, I think a lot of people will say things to me or whatever. Did you see this or do you know this trend? I am so removed, as involved as I am. I don't know really anything going on in that world. Like, I read TechCrunch, but if you tell me a viral trending audio, like, I'm really so bad at that. I literally go on Kristen Cavallari on Bethany Frankel's thing to find audios.
Yes,
I just
Bethany
look at any
Frankel.
audios they've used, I use.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise, I don't want to scroll. I don't want to know. It gives me too much anxiety. So that's my theory. I like Facebook.
Oh my God, that's so old
I
school of
know.
you.
Because it's
Like,
all everyone I went to middle school with, and they don't make me insecure.
no, so true. But also, like, I feel like when you say you use Facebook, because I'm the same age as you, like, it ages us in a way. Because my little sister does
I know.
not use Facebook and, like, never had one. And I'm like, stop. No, like, I go on Facebook sometimes.
I have like an 18-year-old intern, and she met this girl at an event, and I was like, "Did you get her number?" And she's like, "I got her Snapchat." I was like, "What are you gonna do? Sext each other?" She's
Yeah,
like,
what?
"What?" I was like, "Why'd you get her Snapchat?" She was like, "I don't know. Should I have gotten her number?" I was like, "I don't know." Why are you on Snapchat and you're not
So
sexting?
funny. That's so funny. Oh my
Don't sex.
God.
But
Love.
like, yeah, it's like it's a whole different world.
It really is. No,
But
Facebook
for
is
them, when they're
cool.
our age, it'll be a different world.
Mm-hmm. It already is. I mean, like, Twitter is
Yeah.
not really a thing. I mean, I don't know
No.
if you use it. I don't use it. I've never had a Twitter.
No, I did prior to the running thing.
And then you stopped?
Yeah, I mean, I stopped for a while and then now, I don't know. But look, I also think it's very hard to do everything. YouTube, TikTok. I found tremendous success on TikTok with my newer endeavors and on Instagram. The TikTok is like funneled into that. So I give myself a break on Twitter now. LinkedIn is also it's a weird thing now. I don't know if you use LinkedIn a lot.
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah, it's also like its own social media platform,
Yeah, it is.
but
And
also a bit
since
of a
we're
weird.
talking about it, since we're talking about like your Instagram and your TikTok, like let us know where we can find you.
Oh, it's just, yeah, it's all my name. Alexa Curtis, LinkedIn, Alexa Curtis Unfiltered on TikTok, and Alexa underscore Curtis on Instagram. And if you want phone
Hey,
covers, it's Chief Swag Officer or chiefswagofficer.com.
love.
There you
Thanks,
go.
Alexa.
Oh my God, thank you for being such an amazing host.
Oh my gosh, thank you for being such a great guest. I feel like we're besties. I
I
feel
know,
like I
I
can
love
talk
you.
to you
I'm
about
like,
anything.
give me your number so I can send you like microphone covers.
No, I want.
I want to send, I know, I don't even see a microphone right now on your thing, but like, oh yeah, send me your info.
But I have other
And I'll
mics
send you it.
too. Like I have these.
Perfect. Oh, great. Oh, you've got like all of them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I have
message me
them
after
all.
this so I can send you it.
Sounds good. Okay,
Yay.
love you guys. Thanks for listening.